We also have CACFP folks on, and family, I'm not sure we have any family daycare homes, but we may have some family daycare sponsors. Everyone has to follow the same federal procurement regulations. So we want to make sure everyone understands that. And I want to apologize to our CACFP folks if I talk a little more to the school folks on this training. That's not really my intent. It's just that a lot of times they purchase bigger amounts, and sometimes their procurement is a little more, could be a little more complicated than in a CACFP center. Do I realize we have some CACFP centers are as big as some of our school districts? Yes. So let's go ahead and dive in. When you guys put questions in the chat, I think I'm a lone wolf today. I will try to keep a watch and answer them as I can. So someone is asking, does this have to be done every year? If you're asking about the training, no, but procurement has to be done with every purchase. And then we'll get into your plan and some different things. So some things we're going to talk about today is what is procurement, just, you know, the nuts and bolts. What are some of the methods of procurement? About awarding the bid. If you're going to contract with the food service management company, who manages that contract or that agreement? And our record keeping, what records must we keep? What is procurement? It's a multi-step process for obtaining goods and services, equipment, supplies, food, anything purchased with child nutrition funds. If you receive federal reimbursement, it all goes into a child nutrition pot. Any purchases must be procured by using the federal regulations. Hang on just 1 second, if you guys don't mind. I'm gonna make sure everyone is on mute so we don't get feedback. All right, someone's saying they're not hearing sound. If someone knows Sherry, M-U-N-I-Z, you might text her and tell her to log off and log back on. And just remember, if for some reason you do purchase items out of your child nutrition money and you do not procure it correctly, this could be an unallowable cost that cannot be paid for with your child nutrition funds. And in a review process, that could mean that we withhold funds or take back funds. So the purpose of procurement is to ensure that open and free competition exists to the maximum extent possible. And what that means is every vendor that wishes to participate in the process has been given a reasonable degree of chance to participate. Now, the next 3 slides, you guys do not have on your handouts. I know Kendra emailed handouts for the procurement yesterday afternoon. So if you're following along with your handout, these next 3 slides are not going to be on the handout. We had a call with USDA yesterday. Well, that was actually a webinar. It wasn't a call because we weren't allowed to ask questions. What might procurement look like in 21-22? In a normal school year, you have to follow all the regulations that I've been talking about. Now this year, because we're still under the emergency declaration, there is a non-competitive emergency procurement clause at 2 CFR 200.320 little c. And it's to be used to replace unexpected gaps in your contract, to allow you to buy alternate products if necessary. You don't need to apply for this. You don't need a waiver. You don't need to put it in your application. But you have to keep documents of why you're using this emergency procurement. And I know we've been on a couple calls about supply chain issues. We have the milk issue going on in Oklahoma that Highland Dairy can't package our low fat, flavored milk. So you're going to keep documentations as to why you use these emergency procurement. It could also be used if, let's say, you order chicken nuggets and they're on the menu for Thursday, and lo and behold, your whole 20 cases of chicken nuggets don't come in, but the vendor tells you, I can't get you your chicken nuggets. I'm gonna have to sub hamburger patties, or I'm gonna sub your chicken nuggets with a chicken patty. Well, you may not have bid that exact chicken patty. This emergency procurement will allow you to buy that other chicken patty without a waiver, without rebidding, without going through all those processes that you normally must go through. Okay, if you guys do put questions in the chat, when I get to a stopping point, that's when I'll kind of stop and look at those. That'll keep us kind of flowing. So ideas for purchasing during the pandemic. These were some of the notes from yesterday's procurement from USDA. Purchase in smaller quantities from local vendors. And with the emergency purchasing, that is allowed. You're not going to necessarily have to get pricing from 2 or 3 vendors. But let's say you're a medium-sized school and you usually order from XYZ company. XYZ company lets you know they're not going to be able to, so you call Mid-America, you call Cisco, and maybe you have enough to buy in some smaller quantities from some different vendors. You might look at joining or creating a co-op. Sometimes if you're purchasing as a consolidated group, it can help the vendor to be able to justify why they're keeping that much product on hand. If you've not ever purchased under the state contract, we have a couple of slides later on about the state contract, but that is one possibility, because the state contract, because you are a state federal entity, they will have to deliver to you. So if you are a school district and you've now been told so-and-so will not deliver here because we don't do the volume, contact, I believe her name is Teresa Johnson. We have her number and stuff on a later slide, and Cisco under the state contract will be able to deliver to you. Another idea was make sure you utilize your commodity dollars. Make sure those POW dollars and those brown box commodities, your DOD money, that you're utilizing that to the best of your ability. If you have questions, or if you've put things on your survey that now you're not so sure of, get with Gina and the commodity group and find out what you could do to help your menus. Make sure you're menuing those commodity items. And the other thing they really suggested is communicate with your vendors on those outages. What are they going to do about substitutes? Texas has been having meetings with their, the Texas State Department of Agriculture has been meeting with their vendors to get lists and find out from the vendors what kind of substitutions are they going to offer. So if I was a director and I'm putting in my grocery order for the next week, I would be communicating with my vendor, with my salesman, or whoever I communicate with, to find out what items are not available and what the substitution plan is going to be. And find out what items, new items that may be coming in, so that you can meet your goals. We do have the meal pattern waivers for emergency situations if you're not going to be able to meet the meal pattern, but those are for components. That is not for an individual item. So the meal pattern waiver, if you're just going to be outed your chicken nuggets on your truck, that is not an approval to be able to do a meal pattern waiver for chicken nuggets. Chicken nuggets are not a component. They are just a piece of a component. They are a part of the meat alternate component. The meal pattern waiver is for if we are not able to get a whole component. The milk we're approving as a component because you're not able to get that whole entire kind of milk. So that's kind of our 3 slides concerning what procurement might look like in 21-22. In a normal year, like I said, any products or services purchased with child nutrition funds must be procured using the USDA guidelines. Some of the things that are unallowable might be if you are going to use an item, you're going to share an item with some other department in your school. You're buying a vehicle. That vehicle is going to be used for child nutrition, delivery of meals, and to take the football team to games on Friday night. That means 2 different funds are going to be using that vehicle. It has to be prorated on the time it's going to be spent using delivery for child nutrition and the time spent in the other department. So you can't just pay for something out of child nutrition funds if it's not going to totally be used in the child nutrition program. What must you do to prepare for procurement? Well, you have to sit down and take a deep breath. And in order to prepare for procurement, it can be a very successful process if you familiarize yourself with all the federal and state regulations prior to beginning. So that's a part of what you're doing today. You're kind of familiarizing yourself with the process. So first of all, you want to plan. You want to kind of figure out who's those potential bidders, who's going to be the person supplying you those items. What goods or services are you going to be needing? Do you need a new freezer? Are you bidding out your groceries? What exactly are you planning to buy? What procurement schedule is going to make the most sense for your department? Now they're in your procurement plan, and we're going to talk about the plan here in just a second. You may have informal, and we're going to go through that, but those are some things you need to be considering when working on your procurement documents and plans. So procurement starts with a plan menu. So before you start all the other stuff, you need to know what it is you're going to buy. So if you're talking about your food, forecasting is paramount to knowing what you are going to buy and what who that person is going to be that you're going to buy from, or the companies. You want to be able to match those products with those suppliers. In other words, you don't want to send a bid to US Foods if you're buying flooring. That might not be a good match. So forecast what you're going to be buying. You need to have that menu pretty much made up. And I know if you attended cafeteria managers, you learned a little bit about cycle menus. Cycle menus can help immensely with this forecasting. So forecasting is just, knowing what the menu is for the upcoming year. What are those ages of the children? What grade groups are you going to be serving? Again, what kind of USDA commodities do you have on hand, and what are you expected? What did you forecast? Inventory. Inventory is very important, that you know what you have on hand, to know what to forecast, and during the purchasing season, what you need to purchase. In some ways, if you're sitting there thinking, well, that's great. I kind of know what my menu is going to be, but I have no idea what she means by forecasting. Well, an easy way to do that is to either look at your receipts, your invoices from last year, to know what all products you got in and how much of each product did you get in. You can contact your vendor from last year and ask them for a velocity report that tells you every item you purchased from them and how many cases, cans, or whatever that you did purchase. This can help you, this can help you save money when you forecasted accurately, and you're not spending money on items that are not needed. You're not bidding items that are not needed. I know when we've done reviews, we've looked at procurement, Sometimes the specifications are items the school never buys. That's not a good forecast. So our purpose of procurement is to have a good procurement, to have it fair, and to have a bid with integrity. You want to find those contractors that are responsive and are going to be responsible. Responsive means the products or services meet the SFA's needs, your guidelines, your specifications. Responsible means they can and will meet the terms of the contract. That might be a reason that you don't go with a specific company because maybe they're not responsible. They bid in the past and they could not fulfill their terms of the agreement. Your procurement, as we said in the opening, needs to be free and open competition. There has to be transparency when you're going through the procurement process. We don't want to leave any doubt that there is collusion, that there's a conflict of interest. We want to make sure every company had the opportunities to bid. So reaching a potential contractor. The middle part that you see there in the orange is basically the supply chain. Items usually start off, especially in our food products, start off with the growers. Then they sell to manufacturers who sell to distributors, and then our end user, which is the schools or the CACFP centers. Sometimes there's people in between those groups of potential contractors. Manufacturers usually hire a broker or a sales rep to help get their products into different distributors. Sometimes schools, I know, work with brokers on different products. If you are a purchasing co-op, you may be a part of a larger co-op, so those members get some better pricing because of the quantities of products that are going to be used. Sometimes smaller quantities you can get straight from the distributor, but those are going to be at a higher price. If you maybe find from the manufacturer, you may be able to get a lower price if you're getting directly from the manufacturer, but it's going to be a larger quantity. A manufacturer is not going to drop a semi by your school or your daycare with 3 or 4 cases. They want to deliver entire truckloads of items when a manufacturer is delivering. Our procurement plan. Let's talk about a procurement plan. And it doesn't matter if you are a school or a CACFP center or family daycare home, well, not the daycare home, but the daycare sponsor has to have a procurement plan. This details out your procedures that you are going to follow when conducting procurement at your entity. School districts have their procurement plans board approved. If you have a board in your CACFP, I would have them board approve my policy as well. Your plan must include your method of procurements, and we'll go into the different methods here in just a moment, your chart of procedures, your code of conduct, and some protest procedure. The benefit of a procurement plan that identifies the phase that will be taken in a competitive procurement of goods and services. It ensures that the SFA or the CACFP procurements conforms to the federal regulations. It can be a framework for conducting good procurement and to have certain items per USDA. So continuing with our plan for schools, you have to have the Buy American provision. The Buy American provision is for the schools only. It's not in the CACFP regulations. Buy American is basically that 50% or more of the item has to be processed or grown in the United States. We normally look at this on our products when we are doing an administrative review. We look in your storerooms, we look at your invoices. We want to see if the items are indeed Buy American. There are some ways to I don't want to say go around, to for you if you are having trouble finding an item that is not Buy American. There's a few items we know, that are not produced in the United States. Avocados, jalapenos, those are not processed or grown in the United States. So you have to have in your plan what you're going to do if an item that you're wanting to purchase is not Buy American. You also want in your procurement plan a statement about how you are going to treat minority firms, women's business enterprises, and labor surplus area firms. This needs to be a statement that's in your procurement plan. Geographic preference. Geographic preference works if you are going to give extra points or deduct cost for entities that are within a certain area of your school or your entity. So maybe you are going to put in your plan that you are going to give 5 cents off of every case for an entity that's within your state. That might be your geographic preference. We don't, and the federal government doesn't define the radius of the geographic preference. You have to define that in your plan. If you have a beverage contract, you will need to evaluate that beverage contract to make sure it is in compliance with USDA regulations. The contract might not really involve the food service, but they may have slipped something in there that says you can't sell, say, milk in the school district. If it's the old Pepsi, I shouldn't say brand names. A soda manufacturer had in their contract that you couldn't sell milk. That is against the federal regulations for child nutrition. They can't restrict the sale of those type of items. And we have in other documents in CARS and in the resource library for the CACFP centers, a prototype. It is fine to take this prototype and adopt it as your own. Just make sure you read what is in it, that you understand what you are saying you're going to complete with your procurement procedures. In Oklahoma for schools, we have an Oklahoma statute that requires a signed, notarized, non-kickback affidavit on every invoice or every purchase order of $25,000 or more. And in the manual on page P74 is a copy of that non-kickback affidavit. Methods of procurement. There are 2 methods of procurement, and inside those methods are some different types. We have informal and we have formal. Informal covers micro purchasing, small purchase procedures, and the non-competitive procedures. Formal encompasses the invitation for bid, which is also known as a sealed bid, and request for proposal. The chart of procedures, there is an example like this exact page in your child nutrition manual and in the CACFP training manual. What the chart of procedures really is for is if someone new comes into your school and they're trying to figure out, what do I need to do? How do I need to even start this? If they come to their chart of procedures, they're going to see ABC Daycare does a milk bid annually, and they do it under the small purchase method. Bread is only purchased as needed, and it's done under micro purchasing. Fruits, they're canned and frozen. Is 4 times a year under small purchases. It just gives you an idea of how this school or the daycare is going to be conducting their procurement. Let's dive into what micro purchasing and small purchasing and non-competitive are informal procurement. Micro purchasing means that your aggregate transaction does not exceed $10,000. Now the $10,000 is the federal threshold as of right now. Your school district may have different thresholds. You, as the child nutrition person, if you're in a school, you need to make sure what your board has approved for your thresholds. If you are a daycare and you may want to set your threshold at the federal $10,000 threshold, and most of our daycares in Oklahoma do not spend more than $10,000 a transaction, and micro purchasing may be their best method because there's no quotes required. You're not having to call 2 or more vendors to obtain price quotes or writing specifications to get those price quotes. However, the price needs to be reasonable. If you're going out to buy the loaf of bread at the quick stop down the street, that price may not be reasonable. And then again, it may be such an emergency that that's the only place you could find bread. So you're going to have to, reasonable is defined by you. And like the last bullet says, most common for the daycare centers. And it says schools mainly use in emergency situations. It depends on the situation that the schools may need to use this, because you have to spread the wealth. And what we mean by that is if you purchase, maybe you are a daycare and you purchase from Walmart every time, then micro purchasing is not for you, because you have to spread the wealth. Spread it among respectable vendors, spreading the wealth. Program operators may not always purchase from only one source. You have to make sure there's multiple sources available. Products may be similar or dissimilar, but as long as they're purchased as a single collective unit, that's what we mean by your invoice. So if you're always going to Walmart and purchasing, that may not qualify for a micro purchase. Here's an example of a micro purchase. This may be used when an item normally purchased from a vendor was bid and awarded. And this year we may see this a lot. However, the item was not received. It just wasn't on the truck. And it's Monday morning and you have 250 sandwiches to make and the bread was not on the truck. So therefore, you as the food service person are going to run down to the closest Walmart or Costco or Sam's and buy your 10 loaves of bread. This may, the next time something like this happens, you go to the other grocery store. You're wanting to spread that wealth, and as you're going to, look at that to make sure the price is reasonable. Small purchase procedures. It is for purchases under $250,000. That is the federal threshold for small purchases. Your district, however, may have a smaller small purchase procedure threshold. You need to look at that and make sure that is listed in your plan properly. Small purchase procedures means you are checking and obtaining price quotes. This can be done by either email, telephone, oral, catalogs, websites. However, you do want to have your specifications written so that everyone is getting the same opportunity to bid on the same products. It says you must check with a minimum of 2 qualified sources. So if you're a school district and you're purchasing an oven, you're not required necessarily to to send it, put it in an envelope and mail it to 2 entities. You may call 2 sources that and you have written out here, you want an oven, you want a gas oven, 4-burner, oven with a stove on the top, and you got all these, and you call those 2 vendors and you get those prices. You want to document who you spoke to. You want to document the date and time and what their price was. One of the caveats with small purchase procedure is that it's not the bid does not necessarily have to be given to the entity with the lowest price. So you let's say you get 3 prices back, and you're a CACFP center. You get pricing from Walmart, you get from Costco, and you get from Aldi. You've checked all 3 of those stores. However, Walmart will allow you to pick up and doesn't charge you a service charge. Aldi doesn't have a pickup program, and Costco has a pickup program, but maybe they charge you to pick up. Maybe the pricing was a little cheaper at Aldi's, but they don't provide this other service that you really need. You're going to document that's why you're going with this Walmart, because of the availability to pick up those groceries, even though that cost was a little more. So that goes back to if you are why maybe micro purchasing wouldn't work if you are a CACFP center and you're wanting to really just go one place and buy groceries. So kind of the differences in the 2, the micro purchasing versus small purchase. Micro purchase is you're going to be buying from multiple stores, and the items could be similar or dissimilar. It could be emergency purchasing from a local grocery store. You're not necessarily purchasing from a vendor, but you could be. Micro purchasing, you're not having to check pricing. But again, if you're not checking pricing, you could be paying a little higher price. Now, we've talked about the thresholds, and small purchasing, maybe you're only going to spend $5, but you checked online at the different pricing and you're going to buy a $5 item, and you're going to buy it because it's cheaper over here than it was over there. That's a small purchase procedure, even though you didn't spend, over $10,000. The thresholds are just there so that you have to do something once you reach that threshold, but you can always do the over the threshold if you so choose. And again, you don't have to go with the lowest price, but you just have to justify why you went with that company that was not the lowest price. In our child nutrition manuals, we do have vendor contacts, so that if you're calling and getting these price quotes, we make it pretty easy. You put their name, their address, their information, and what kind of response you receive. That way you are tracking, you are documenting your procurement activities. Non-competitive, which also encompasses our emergency purchasing this year, but it could also be if your item in a normal year, you can only find the item from one source. Competition isn't adequate. That would be that you could only find it from one source. Or if competition isn't adequate, you're out in Western Oklahoma and there's only one grocery vendor that will come out to see you. And on these non-competitive, in a normal year, the state agency is supposed to approve those non-competitive proposals. Our formal procurement, daycares, you may not be interested in the formal procurement because you may not be spending over $250,000 in a year for your groceries or any other items, but hang with us and listen for just a moment. Invitation for bid, which we refer to as the IFB, our request for proposal, which is the RFP. Because you know, in child nutrition, we love our acronyms. You know, I'm just going to throw that out there. We have a whole page on, I think it's C6, where we go over our acronyms. Formal procurement is purchases over $250,000 per bid or solicitation document. Most of the time, this is for schools, is our groceries, is our food and our milk. You want to have some written specifications and submit those to a minimum of 2 vendors. Formal procurement has to be advertised, it says, in a newspaper or where your normal bids are advertised for your school district. You want to make sure, you know, that you're getting the word out there that you're wanting bids so that you can get the best prices. Because that's why you're doing all this work, is to get the best prices for your school. The requirement is specifications must be sent out to a minimum of 2. However, you may not get responses from both vendors. Matter of fact, you may not get responses from either vendor. And then you have to, you know, back up and start over. Quotes need to be sent to the district on a specific date and time. You're going to fill out a packet, so to speak, and give to the vendor, and you're going to tell them when you're going to open their bid, the time, and the that needs to be in the advertisement and in your solicitation letter. When you're advertising for your RFP or your IFP, USDA suggests at least 45 days for an IFB, which is that sealed bid, and at least 60 days for an RFP from the time the information is given to the vendor until the time of the bid opening. Never should it be less than 30 days. Vendors will not probably even bid for you if you do not give them time to do their due diligence on the procurement procedures. They have to have time to be able to research pricing and give you a good price for what you're asking. So a sealed bid, the sealed bid is awarded to the company or the vendor with the lowest price, no exceptions. If you send out a grocery bid and you say, I'm going to do it as a IFB sealed bid, whichever one has the lowest price, and if you do that as a line item, whichever company has the lowest price for that item, that is who you will buy it from. If you send it out as a market basket and you're going to buy from the company that has the overall best pricing, that is the company you have to go with. There's no exception in the invitation for bid. Request for the proposal or RFP. It's another method. It is what we use in the state of Oklahoma for food service management company contracts. And if your district is interested in going out for bid to contract out your child nutrition services, you will contact Becky Gray at the SDE. And if you need her email, we can get that to you, or call and ask for Becky Gray. These contracts are not awarded based on price alone. Price is the primary consideration, but it is one of the point values that are assigned to the RFP scale. Here is what the evaluation criteria might look like for a entity using an RFP. And as you can see, we've highlighted price because price has to have the most weighted points. And you know, if you're, this would be how the school fills this out. This is something a food service management company, if you know, they may look at after you've awarded the bid to see how they scored if they did an Open Records Act. If you're doing formal, you have to remember you have to have all the clauses in your solicitation documents. Your Buy American if you're a school district, USDA equal opportunity information, termination for clause, not clause, but cause, the Clean Water Act provision, Let me back up just a second. This information is also provided in the handouts that Kendra sent out yesterday, and they're also on page P37. Just bring up briefly what we find sometimes when we do an administrative procurement review. We have schools tell us, oh, we did a formal invitation for bid, and they've not included any of the clauses for their formal bid. So therefore, it was really just a bid they sent out and wanted back in a sealed envelope. Here are the other types of clauses that you need in your solicitation documents. Procurement thresholds cannot just be arbitrarily divided to fall below the simplified acquisition threshold to avoid this formal procurement. So say when I was in McAllister, we spent roughly $500,000 a year on groceries. I could not just arbitrarily say, well, I'm going to divide that up and say I'm only going to do the bid for half the year and say I spent less than $250,000. So I could do small purchase instead of formal, because my threshold was over the formal threshold. It required a formal bid. So this slide just kind of gives you how to move, knowing what threshold and what type of procurement you may need. So if you spend under 10,000 and you're going to spread the wealth, then yes, you can do micro purchasing. If the prices are reasonable and the purchase of the products similar to similar are purchased as a single source, then you spread that wealth. So if the purchase wasn't under $10,000, then you have to move over to maybe look at small purchase procedures. So if you're going to spend under the $250,000, then you could do small purchase, which is the other informal. So you need those specifications. You need them written out like a detailed grocery list. You need to send to or call or check pricing with at least 2 or more stores or vendors. And it says it can be done by the phone, online, catalog, email. You want to maintain your documentation when and how you compared your pricing. So if that was all no and you spent over $250,000, you will need to do formal procurement. So you're going to decide if you're going to do an RFP or an IFB, which you will need for either one of them, written specifications. You're going to advertise. You are going to have a formal evaluation bid opening. This is usually where the vendors can come sit in and they look at what everyone else bid. And we're going to talk about vendors helping you with your specifications. That is unallowable. So let's go ahead and move into some unallowable practices. The potential contractor writing the bid, the proposal, or the product specifications. So if you have a food service management company, they are not allowed to help you write your proposal or your specifications. You also should never ever take your list from your vendor if you're bidding out your groceries as your product specifications and send them to other vendors. Those need to be typed or written in your own on your own document. The potential contractor could not evaluate the proposal submitted by its competitors. That would be that unfair, that's unethical. Purchasing without following the procurement procedure. So if you just decide, I like Joe Blow and I'm going to buy from them, and we discover this in a review, these could be unallowable purchases made with child nutrition funds, and we could request those funds be paid back. Solicitation letter, that can be for formal or informal if you so choose to send out a solicitation for informal. But your solicitation letter should be on your district or entity's letterhead. You need that date of the letter. Make sure you let them know the specifications are there. You want to let them know the method of response you want back. Do you want that back in that sealed envelope? Do you want it to come in by fax? Do you email? The deadline. When is this information due back to you? How are you going to handle shortages and substitutions? Are they going to let you know the day before, the day of? What is going to be the procedure for those substitution? If this is formal, it has to have the equal opportunity employment statement, the Buy American. If you are a school, that really needs to be there. So the vendor knows they need to let you know if there's an item that's normally processed in America or an American grown product and they're getting it from another country. Termination for cause. You want to make sure that you have basically a way out of the contract for either of you if one or the other are not meeting the contract obligations. Special conditions that you may need are nutrition facts, CN labels, the type of food you want, what quantity, what quality are you wanting, all grade A vegetables, or you need to let them know in the solicitation. Here is an example of a solicitation letter in the Child Nutrition Manual. If you're going to use our example, please make sure you change the name of the school up at the top, and you put that on your own letterhead. But that's a good example letter to use for a solicitation announcement. Product specifications, it just means a clear, accurate description of the goods or services that you are wanting to procure. It ensures the purchase of the quality of food at competitive prices. You want to make these as clear so everyone will be bidding on the same item. Then our last bullet talks about brand name products. And we go back and forth with brand name products because it's really not allowable to say, I want an XYZ chicken nugget. However, we do allow if you want an XYZ chicken nugget and you've had a taste testing and that's the one your kids will eat, you have to allow other bidders to bid another chicken nugget. And maybe you have in your solicitation, you will only, the brand name products have been taste tested and these are the acceptable. Please contact Director so-and-so if you have an alternative product to be bid. Because everyone has to be able to bid on the same items. Your specifications should also be simple but precise, clear and understandable, capable of being met by at least those two bidders. And you really want to use terms that are industry specific, whole grain rich, CN labels. Child nutrition people know what a CN label is. Sometimes I wonder if we do, but we are supposed to. Here's just a specification example. I would be a little leery of just saying apples fresh. I might want to say apples, fresh, Fuji or Granny Smith, or maybe you want a couple different apples. But this case count is what keeps everyone the same. Ground beef, you want to be specific. If you just say I want a price on ground beef, you might get pricing on 80-20 ground beef. You might get pricing on 1979 or 80, what is the others? 90-10. So be specific when you're writing those specifications. And this is just kind of a flow chart that describes how to get to the solicitation. Write down the type of goods or services and the frequency. Write the solicitation document and specification. Determine those sources to be contracted and contact those sources. Farm to everything. We used to have farm to school, farm to table, and now basically it's farm to everything. You are allowed to purchase foods with your child nutrition dollars from local vendors. That can be accomplished with the micro purchasing. This can even be in your, if you are a child care and you want to use your dollars for holding a taste test and demonstrations for using some local foods. Maybe you're looking at putting in a garden. You're going to take those kiddos on a farm visit, some culinary activities, food-related education. We work closely with OSU Cooking for Kids. We are going to get them more involved in the CECFP programs, we hope. And that would be an allowable cost to use your funds, maybe for travel, to go to some of those trainings. Just some ideas for local foods that, you know, your local distributor, your farmers, your farmer market, you know, just a farm stand on the roadside. If you're growing from a local garden, I know several years ago, I did a review of a home daycare, and she actually was using tomatoes out of her garden. And so I showed her how to, you know, make sure that was documented, that so she could use that in her meal plan. And when you're buying from those local entities, you're supporting local agriculture in your community. Now we've done all the steps and we've sent out our price quotes, and now we're going to award the bid. We're going to do some awarding here. So we've received those price quotes and those rates. We're going to make sure everything is documented. We want to make sure the potential contractor has responded and is responsible. We want to look at those rate or price quotes. We want to make sure the date received, that we received the bid, is good. The quantity, the goods and services they're going to provide is what we've asked for, and the overall procurement period. And sometimes talking about the date received, that can be a source of contention, because if you've told in your IFB or your invitation for bid or your RFP that you're going, you know, only receive these bids until 4 o'clock on Friday. Tomorrow's Friday 13th. On Friday the 13th at 4 o'clock, and that potential bidder walks in Friday at 5 o'clock, that time has expired and you are not to accept that bid from that vendor who has brought your bid in late. If you're awarding for a prime vendor, and we really didn't talk much about a prime vendor is where you're going to award a bid with a certain amount of products, 80%, 90%, that has to be in your solicitation. You're using a market basket, or you're grouping your products together, and that's how you did your solicitation. You may have done your bid, as I said a while ago, as a line item, and you're going to purchase the item from the company that has the lowest price. I tell a quick story. When we first went self-op in McAllister, after being with the food service management company for almost 20 years, I really didn't understand procurement. The state didn't have much training on procurement, and I sent out as a line item bid. I had 5 vendors who bid on our groceries. I had to purchase each item that was because I did a invitation for bid, not request for proposal. So I had to buy from all 5 companies whatever product was the least expensive at that company. We had 10 schools at McAllister. That was 5 companies coming to all 10 sites every Monday. As the cafeteria managers that are still there will tell you, that was almost a nightmare. We did figure out some way and work with those vendors to trim it down some, and I learned a valuable lesson on line item bids. Line item bid is not bad. it can still get you the best price because the vendor knows you are only going to buy that item from them. A prime vendor is, like I said, 80%, 90%. You specify the percentage that you are going to buy from one source. You want to look at what company is going to give you the overall best pricing. State contract. Talked about this at the beginning. The state contract right now is with Cisco. The state procures it. You don't have to have specifications. You don't have to go out for bid. You can sign up and jump on with the state contract. It's a fixed cost. They do a vendor cost plus fixed fee. There's no salesman, however. If you're a small school and you enjoy your salesman, first of all, you're probably paying a higher price, but that because you're paying for a service. With the state contract, there's no salesman. Ordering is done online. Here is Teresa Johnson's number and the website that you can go look at the state contract. Her number is 405-521-2289 if you need that. Kind of some advantages and disadvantages of the prime vendor. We should have probably flipped those slides, but that's okay. The district only deals with one supplier. Orders are placed and delivered and invoiced with one supplier. That was our plus. Getting in 10 schools, 10 invoices times 5. Our accounts payable person was also about to come undone because that increased her volume of workload exponentially. Some of the disadvantages is you may pay a higher price for some items because of how the company calculates their product because they're going to make a profit. And it may limit the number of vendors who respond. A market basket is simply how you're going to do this with your bidder getting the lowest price receives the award. If you've done this as a invitation for bid, if you've done it as an RFP, there are, you use the pricing or the scale to award the points to see who has the overall best contract. Some advantages is it allows more vendors. If you're going to use the market basket groupings, the volume for the entire lot tend to be large, so pricing is stronger. It limits the total number of suppliers that are going to be stopping at your door delivery. It provides opportunity to purchase specialty items so that you can communicate with that vendor. And a disadvantage, you may, if you're doing a line item, you may be getting cereal from this vendor, and because your kids love that brand of cereal, but maybe the vendor with the best price in the overall market basket doesn't carry that cereal. So that'll be something you have to look at and deem necessary what you're going to do for your school district. Like I said, a line item is awarded by each product separately to the lowest bidder. And then here's kind of the advantages is the best price for an individual item. And then some of the disadvantages, the first bullet is kind of funny, need to remember what products from what supplier. That was probably the most difficult when we went to the self-op. And I had an order guide for Benny Keith, one for US Foods, one for Cisco, one for PFG, and I forgot who the other one was. Anyway, I had an order guide from each of them. So, if the ladies had to, if they couldn't find it on the PFG order guide, they had to look through the other order guides to find it. It was very time consuming. They may not be able to meet the distributor's minimum for delivery. So if maybe the company X only got your cereal, well, you may not be ordering 20 case the minimum to have a truck come in. So you have to look at all of those, the cost and what is most advantageous for your school. And then in our manuals, of course, there are some documentations, and that also went out in your handouts so that you can track how to document your price quotes and your pricing. We talked a little bit about contracting for your food service. Here is Becky Gray's telephone number and her email if you're interested in your food service management being contracted out to a food service management company. There is an approved list of companies in the Child Nutrition Manual of those approved vendors in the state of Oklahoma. If you're a CACFP and you're going to contract out, that agreement has to be approved by the State Department, the same as the schools. We approve those contracts before they are agreed upon. So if you are a school and you are going to contract with a CACFP, a daycare center is going to purchase their meals from you, that needs to have a contract. There needs to be a meal delivery receipt with every meal. The school is going to be responsible for those production records, and that they're going to be responsible for making sure those meal patterns are being met. But the CACFP also must monitor the contract and make sure those menus are meeting those meal patterns. The school will bill the CACFP institution on a monthly basis, and the CACFP will claim those meals. Now, this year, with the waivers that are in place, if your daycare is going to pick up meals at a school, because the schools are allowed to feed anyone ages 1 to 18 again this year, make sure you're not claiming the meals and the school is claiming the meals. Those can only be claimed one entity. We don't want to have to come in and take back money for someone double claiming, double dipping. Here is just an example of a meal delivery receipt. Those need to be signed by the daycare in the school and or the food service management company. Contract meals claiming, I kind of already said this, meals are claimed based on the meals served, not consumed. And what we mean by that is if you're a daycare and you're ordering from the school and you call and you order 25 meals, and you're the daycare and you're claiming it, you're not going to claim 25 meals because you only fed, as the slide shows, 18 kids. You're going to have to pay the school for the 25 meals, but you're only going to get reimbursed for the 18 that actually ate. This is very important that you understand, and you're not over ordering when you call and order your meals. You need some type of system to only order the meals you're actually going to be needing and be able to claim. And remember, adult meals in neither program are ever claimed on the claims for reimbursement. And here, if you are contracting with the school, if you're a daycare and you're contracting with the school, we tell the schools how much they have to charge you. They're not making up their own charge. They have to charge you the free reimbursement rate for breakfast. For lunch, lunch and supper, it has to be the free reimbursement rate plus the value of their commodity and the 7-cent incentive. And then, of course, snack is the reimbursement rate. And remember, every year a new contract must be signed if you are contracting with the school. If you're contracting with a food service management company, those are done on the RFP, and usually it's a 5-year contract, well, a 1-year contract with up to 4-year renewals. Remember, if you're a daycare and you're contracting with the school, it is required that the CACFP meal patterns are being delivered. So schools, you've got to deliver that CACFP meal pattern based on the serving sizes that are different than the national school lunch. And there are some sugar limitations for the CACFP that are not currently in the school meal pattern, with the sugar limitations for cereal, yogurt, and there are no grain-based desserts that are allowed in CACFP. Excuse me. And I've talked a little bit about managing the contract. It is the entity that is doing the contracting, and is your requirement to manage the contract. In other words, if you've contracted out your food service with a food service management company, you can't just throw up your hands and say, oh, thank God, I've got a food service management company, and I don't have to do anything else in child nutrition. Our contract is with the school or the entity, not with the food service management company. We want you to make sure that you are focusing on getting the items that you are paying for, that if you have disputes, you know how to resolve them. You have the right products and the right services. You're getting the quantity you want. Meals are being delivered on time. They're being delivered to the right location. The cost is correct. Look at those invoices and make sure you're being charged the right amount. In our schools, food service management companies are only allowed to charge per meal. There's not any other allowable charges that can be given to the schools. And I love the little chef. You mean I was supposed to document all that stuff about the type and amount of milk I just delivered? I thought I was supposed to just put it in the cooler. Well, would be good in, the not so real world, but we live in the real world where we have to document. If it's not documented, there's no proof that it happened. Our contract and agreement, you want to make sure that you're following these best practices, that the procurement was clear and concise. Those contract terms and conditions are spelled out, that you're communicating with your contractor, your contract management plan. Employees are trained. We had a training this morning on professional standards. If you're in a school, professional standard hours are required. If you are employed by the school district or you're employed by the food service management company. There may be some other things in your contract, like when those meals are delivered, what are those conditions, the food temperatures, and other things that may be spelled out. Records, you want to make sure you're keeping your records of your procurement. Documents for CACFP administrative review. These are the items that our consultants are going to ask you for during an administrative review in a CACFP. They're going to want to look at your plan, your code of conduct, your protest procedures, those chart of procedures, your receipts, your invoices. Your receipts and invoices must be signed and dated. They may look at your product specifications if you've done small purchase method or above, your bid documents, the food service agreement with that food service management company or the agreement with the school. If you are a school district, you will have that separate review. Our reviews are on the same schedule as our administrative reviews, so those are conducted every 5 years, unless you are with a food service management company, and then those reviews are conducted every 3 years. Tell me that's not hard to keep up with, especially with schools that are with a food service management company and then they change, and it does get a little confusing. Documents that you will need for a food service, not food service, but for a procurement review, for an administrative procurement review, is your plan, your protest procedures, your product specifications, and all the other documents you see listed there on the screen. If you're with a food service management company, we will look at the contract, the documents, your receipts, your invoices, expenditures, and we are always looking at the prior year on procurement from a school district standpoint. The procurement tool that we have you complete is going to be sent to you by Robin Dickerson at DWG. It is a consulting firm that we being the State Department, contract with to do our procurement reviews. A little more about it, procurement. If you're a school district, you have to have purchase orders and encumbrances before any goods or services can be ordered. Invoices and receipts must be signed and dated. And it says by schools. It's really a best practice for you if you're in a CACFP also. Maintain everything. Don't throw your price quotes away, even if it's on a scrap piece of paper. Date it and put it in your file. If you're a school district and you're going to purchase, your purchase order is going to be over 250, not 250,000, about 25,000, you need to do that non-kickback affidavit and have it on file for us to review during administrative review or procurement review. Retain all the related documents. Keep those for 3 years plus the year you're working in, or if you're in an audit type situation, you're going to keep it until the audit is resolved. Resources for school procurements in our CARS other documents. There is a plethora of information. Child nutrition, we have the training manual complete section on procurement. There's also, if you go out to USDA, there are different manuals that discuss procurement. I have 2 on my desk. The last one was updated in 2016. I assume USDA has been a little busy, so they haven't updated that, with 2 years of pandemic. You can also go out to the Institute of Child Nutrition to look at procurement information and to obtain other procurement training if you so choose or have questions. Some resources for the CACFP folks. There's in the application, the resource library. There is procurement section in your training manual as well. ICN is not just for schools. It has information for the CACFP folks as well. All right, we have finally made it to the end of our PowerPoint. I'm going to take just a sec and I'm going to scroll our questions, our chat all the way up. Okay, we're back to when school was starting. So let me scroll back down a little bit. Some of our schools started, some of our daycares. It looks like you guys go all the time. Okay. Are we able to have prerequisites for bidders? For example, prior experience. B. Adamson, you asked that question. There are some ways to have prerequisites. You know, for checking experience, you may have in your solicitation that give us 3 references. That might be a way to check their prior experience. Concerning the state contract, Julie asked, concerning the state contract, Cisco was speaking to the soup from another school today, and he said he did not get some products from them. I'm going to imagine with our supply chain issues that are going on, it will not matter what company you are doing business with, there is going to be some product shortages. B. Adamson asked, anyone interested in a co-op or have space in their co-op? I would suggest you get with, I'm not sure I should say this on the call, but we do have one co-op that we are aware of at the State Department. And I'm not sure they're taking on any more folks at this time, but that was Campus Smart out of Edmond Public Schools. How often is a procurement review? I hope we answered that in the PowerPoint. It's every 5 years unless you're with a food service management company, and then it's every 3. Is there a dollar threshold or does the school determine that? The thresholds are set by the federal government. Anything 10,000 and under is could be a micro purchase. 250,000 or below or between 10,000 is should be a small purchase procedure. Anything over 250,000 must be formal. And I go back and review those slides but the one thing you need to determine is if your school sets different thresholds. Do we document why it's best value to keep our records clean? I'm not understanding that question. But yes, you need to document everything. How do I get a child nutrition calendar? We are sorry, Dina, we did not print calendars this year because when we started putting the information in the calendar, we were told we were not going to be doing free and reduced lunch applications, and then we were, and then we were not doing SSO, and then we were. We hated to put a calendar out with wrong information on it. What documents do we need if we use the state contract? You just need to tell us when we come to do a review that you're using the state contract. We are campus smart, but purchase milk from Highland. Do we need a separate procurement plan? You don't need a separate procurement plan, but you need to have a procurement process for how you are purchasing your milk. You can't just, here's the thing, milk, yes, Highland is the only company that will deliver milk, but you can get pricing for milk from other companies. It's probably going to be higher and you're not going to want to purchase it from them, but you at least did your due diligence and tried to get another price from them. And I thought Campus Smart had the milk too, so, but that I'm not totally aware of. Do we have any other questions before we let you guys hop off? We've been about an hour and a half. All right, and you guys just remember we are under the pandemic, so there are still the emergency purchasing for the school year 22. Meal pattern flexibility is available if you are not able to get an entire component for your meal pattern. Your daycares, there is not a meal pattern waiver for you at this moment. If you run into complete component issues, you need to contact our CACFP director, Cassie Rydell. All right, I don't see any other questions. Thank you guys. You guys have been a wonderful audience. We will send out certificates. Do not look for them. Give us at least a week or more to get those out. Thank you guys. We appreciate you guys. I miss seeing you guys face to face. I hope soon to be able to be out in the schools myself and see some of you guys. I miss you. Thank you.